Hello, everyone. This is Daniel Giamario here for our monthly video blog, and it's my pleasure to have with me for this one is Naraya, who, of course, is a member of our council, prime nucleus member of our council, and she's going to be helping me out on this. I'm here today, and we have a topic that a lot of people don't really know about, and but it's now become well, actually, for many years, it's been a great interest to me, and because of my interest in it, our school has recently made the radical move, which is to have the world charts, that we share in the seminars, like planetary ingress into a new sign, the things that apply to the whole planet. You have to actually have the angles of that chart from somewhere. I mean, if it's the United States, let's say, or if it's an individual chart of a person, then obviously you use where that person is born or where that country was birthed. So when we use the US chart, we do it out of Philadelphia. Use my chart, we do it out of Atlanta, where I was born. But these world charts, most people who've done this over the years, they use Greenwich, which is the current so-called Prime Meridian, which people don't even think about that much about, well, why is that the Prime Meridian? Now, the Prime Meridian, at least in more recent history, became important because until the 1700s, it was actually the time of Cook's, Captain Cook's expeditions, that even at that time period, there was difficulty for the sailors to know what longitude they were at.
Hmm.
Uh, it's easy to tell latitude because you can always see what the number of degrees are above the number of degrees from Polaris, the North Star, and the horizon, and you can know the latitude. But to know longitude was a problem, although there's a lot of esoteric and kind of prehistory information about how the sailors from the past and other time periods were able to know that. Maybe it's beyond the scope of this conversation to go into how they did that. I know how the Hawaiians did it. Okay, I mean that's something that I've come in up with an awareness of from working with the navigators in Hawaii. But the prime meridian thing, what has been used in modern times meaning since 1884 only, was looking at placing the prime meridian in Greenwich, England. Now, interestingly, in doing a research on that, the conference where they came up with Greenwich and made the decision to have it be Greenwich happened in the United States. That conference was not even in England; it was in the United States when they had that, and it was assembling there were leaders and scientists from all over the world. But the greatest number of those who were there were English, American, and French. Now, the French had wanted the prime meridian to be Paris, but the decision, because of the voting that happened from the Americans and the British, was to set it at Greenwich. Because why? Because at that time period, the British kind of ruled the planet with their fleets. So there's at that point, the budding of the Anglo-American Empire. So they needed a prime meridian that was from Greenwich, and so that they could have all of their calculations and nautical information stemming from there. But it's very interesting because for at least 2,000 years that we know, maybe 3,000, back to Greek times, and I'm going to suggest all the way back to the Younger Dryas time, which was around 12,000, 13,000 years ago, that most of the world for really logical reasons, thought of the Giza longitude to be the prime meridian. Now, that makes a great deal of sense because of the fact that just from a geographical perspective, not just because of the placement of the pyramids, and it's said that by esotericists that the pyramids are there for the very reason that it's the actual near the exact center point of the geographical landmass of the world island of where most of the land on the planet is in the northern hemisphere, not the southern hemisphere. So the center point of the landmass is right there. Now, of course, there's many other conversations we could have that many books have been written about all the things that are encoded in the Giza pyramids that have to do with the circumference of the earth, the diameter of the earth, sacred geometry. Everything is encoded in the pyramid. Actually, one of my favorite researchers, Joseph Farrell, says, well, it's kind of irrelevant whether there's a hall of records because of the fact that the pyramids themselves are the hall of records. You know, just the way that they're built and what's encoded in their construction is in fact the hall of records. So what we're now doing in the school is having the world charts have the angles of those charts, you know, like just today, earlier today, we had a one of the last of the four highlight seminars that had to do with Uranus moving into Gemini. And what we used for that, of course, was the ingress chart based on Giza, not Greenwich, right? So let's for a moment take a look at the timeline of history. And this will be something which then will frame the rest of our investigation here this evening.
Yeah, I am certainly very interested in this type of research and in this type of, let's say, reasoning that, again, just does not go along with what has always been. So here we are, you know, dreaming the myth forward, and this definitely is a big part of dreaming the myth forward on a very important level. So keep taking it away, Daniel. I'm really all ears because I know myself very little about this topic, and so I'm the audience as much as everyone else.
Great. So now this is something. This is a table that we've shared many times in in fact, even in the Unite seminars that we did. This happened. We include this several times, and I usually include this in almost every seminar because I love to provide the larger context, not just all the remarkable stuff in 2025, but the fact that all the remarkable things in 2025 are within a larger context, which is the end of Kali Yuga, the greater turning of the ages, the different pole stars, geological history. That's all encoded in this table here. And the reason I'm wanting to just bring this up here at first is because we will be, in the course of our conversation today, taking it all the way back before the Younger Dryas. You see, the Younger Dryas was that 1200-year time period that followed the previous golden age and then leading to the descent of the yugas to where we are right now, which is the end of the Kali Yuga, the last 5,000 years, which was the deepest descent of spirit into matter. So it's the time of the greatest amount of materialism, which according to mythic and other renditions is the time where it gets composted, you know, so we then start the ascent back up to another golden age. If you're interested in that topic, we do have a series of seminars on that, including 2 interviews with Bibhu Dev Mishra, who wrote the book Yuga Shift, that goes into all of this from this perspective. Although his work does not include anything about the Prime Meridian, but that's what
Yeah.
we're adding to that here. So why I'm bringing this up is just so that when you have a better understanding of when later in our conversation we go back before Giza was the prime meridian. And so note that since only since 1884 has Greenwich been the prime meridian. And I'll reiterate, it was a political and Anglo-American empire decision in order to have it be where it is now. So I've always been adverse, or at least critical of uh, political decisions based on who's been in charge recently, right? So now I have had conversations regarding all of this with our colleague Gemini Brett, who I will be doing the cosmology event with in Haywood Hot Springs in September. And anyway, he is very much an exponent of what could be called geodetic or local space or locational astrology. He's actually far more uh, skilled and knowledgeable about that than I am. But I asked him to prepare the geodetic charts that compares the way that those kinds of astrologers look at the attribution of signs to different countries based upon the prime meridian. And there's a difference between how those attributions are made if you use Greenwich compared to whether you use Giza. So I wanted to give those listening here today an opportunity to see what's at stake with that, right? So why don't we first, if you can, put up the one for Greenwich, and I
Yeah,
will.
before I do that, Daniel, I just want to put a little blurb in here about the Haywood event. So this is a whole cosmology course that Daniel will be teaching together with Gemini Brett. It was previously sold out as far as I understand, but I think we now have a few openings. So if anyone is interested, make a dash to our website, turningofftheages.com, and check that out. It is happening in somewhere in the middle of September. I don't exactly know the dates.
September 21st to the 28th.
There we go.
And
Okay.
one of the things we will do there is place 4 additional stones that are associated with the lunar standstill. And we are, of course, in a lunar standstill season now. And that will happen on the last 2 days of the event, placing those stones.
And for those who don't know what we're talking about, it is that at this particular place, Daniel has designed and with his friend built a large working, functioning stone circle. It's an amazing, amazing site. So if anyone is interested in that, join us there. And so with that, Daniel, carry on. I'll bring up the
so I want to
thing
first,
that we need.
we're going to first look at one of the ways the geodetic map is used. There are many ways it can be used, but I'm just going to illustrate one expression of it, and then to see how it would be different if you used Giza.
I'm trying to see that. Let's try this one. I don't know. Is this the right one, Daniel?
This is the one where, no, this is the Giza one.
Oh, so you want the other one?
First, yeah.
Okay, hang on a moment. I'll try to find that for you. Yeah, I think this should be the right one then. This one?
Right. So here you can see here the red line where it's Aries at the top. and it goes
No,
straight,
this one.
it goes straight through Greenwich. The red line that goes through Greenwich, right there. So that is then determined to be 0 Aries. So therefore, if you ran a Greenwich-oriented horoscope, then that would be the one you would base it on. And so you can see, therefore, that it goes straight through Greenwich, not that far from where you are now. And just as something which those of you out there that are familiar with relocation astrology, or you do the angles, let's say, of your chart in a different location, you would know that it changes one entire sign about every 2 time zones, right? So here, if you go to the right of the Aries line, the next line down is the Taurus line. And that's the one that actually is now going through Egypt and Europe, okay, and down through certain portions of Africa. That's the Taurus line. And then actually the one way that astrologers have used this is to then say that those countries to the right of the Taurus line, for example, are Taurus countries. Everything to the right of the Aries line is Aries countries, and so on. And there are techniques and ways of coming up with the houses of the charts and things like that. But so that every 2 time zones, there's a different zone of the Earth that is, using the mainstream language, are ruled by a particular sign. And so this is what is used by the great majority of astrologers. I can't help but to tell a story, a personal story for me. I went to the UAC conference. That's the sort of gathering every 3 years of astrologers from around the world. And I went to a lecture of someone actually more from my generation, who was giving a talk about this, about geodetics and astrolocality and so on. And everything was based upon, of course, the Greenwich Prime Meridian. And so I ended up in that call being in that talk, that lecture, actually asking the question that was not particularly appreciated by the one who was leading the group. And I said, well, why are you using the Prime Meridian in Greenwich? And I started to just talk about that. And I guess I really, anyway, I was sort of shunned. We're not going there. We're not talking about that, So I was trying to bring up the fact that, there could be other prime meridians. It's actually arbitrary in a sense, although not arbitrary if you look at 1884, because it was a political decision to put it there.
Yeah, but certainly for astrologers, it's very arbitrary. From the perspective of astrology, it really does not make sense to base it there. There are many, many other aspects that make much more sense.
True. And so that's happened in other ways. It's been a big issue for me regarding the way the international body, the International Astrological Union, just decided in 1930 to draw the constellations differently. And they created out of thin air 88 constellations and completely eliminated the way the ancients understood it, which was the space in between distinct star patterns was as important as the distinct star patterns themselves.
So that would be an entire topic for another vlog, Daniel. I think that would be very, very interesting for everybody who hasn't heard about that before.
True. And so it's kind of like musicians should be outraged because a good musician knows the space between the notes is as important as the notes themselves, you know. So that was eliminated from the sky in 1930. And many astrologers don't even realize that the IAU messed with the sky and actually purposely eliminated certain features that many astrologers have bought into, which is why they now, some of them talk about a 13th sign, because the IAU, and I have it from a reliable source, put a piece of Ophiuchus along the ecliptic primarily to mess with astrologers. And boy, did it ever do that. So anyway, it's an issue that matters. So now let's take a look at the prime meridian if it's through Giza. So now the Aries line, which in this slide here is the red line that comes down, and now it's right through Giza and down through the rift zone of Africa and goes up through a different portion of Europe. We're going to show you here in a moment the countries that are along this Giza prime meridian, therefore the zero Aries point that everything would be measured out from. And then now everything between to the right of Aries over to the Taurus line then would be the Aries countries or the Aries zone, okay? Now, I want to weave in something here that I think you are somewhat familiar with, Naraya. And I became aware of it back in maybe it was 2016, somewhere around that time period, when I was invited to be one of the facilitators on a group of people that went to Africa.
Mm.
And the design of the trip was to spend time with Linda Tucker to go visit the White Lion project that she was involved with. And that's when I first actually got a much greater understanding of the concept called Zep Tepi. Now that is translated out to mean the first time.
Mm. Mm.
Now there's a variety of opinions on this. The majority of those that have delved into this believe that it refers to the time period about 12 to 13,000 years ago. And so the Zep Tepi first time would have been at the time period when, according to Robert Schoch and other researchers, is when the Sphinx happened. And that was at around the same time as Göbekli Tepe. In other words, things that happened right after the cataclysms of the Younger Dryas, which was that 1200-year time period where either plasma bursts or cometary strike happened that froze up the earth for 1200 years. And one of the things that happened from that was the raising of the oceans by about 400 meters. And at the point of the meltdown, a very fast meltdown that happened. Anyway, this line, the Zep Tepi line, which is a longitudinal line, was incredibly important because it went right through Giza, right? So and so therefore one of the really intriguing things to look at. Oh, I forgot to mention, there is a different view that says, well, if you do the celestial mechanics on it and look at the astronomy, that actually Zep Tepi was 26,000 years before 12,000 years ago. It lines up. So we're talking about something really ancient, you know, that goes back before the maximum glaciation in the ordinary cycles, the natural cycles that happened 26,000 years ago. So one is going back 12,000 years before that to what might be Zep Tepi. So, but anyway, it's either 12 to 13,000 years ago, or it's
36,000 years ago, that would be 1.5 precessional cycles, basically. Wow.
But I thought it would be interesting for you all to see the countries that are along what is 31 degrees, 31 degrees longitude, 31 degrees, according to Greenwich, 31 degrees east longitude.
Hang on for a moment. I'll try and find that for us. 31 here, that should be it. So that is the map again, which is the same as where we have seen this Aries line in the previous screen share. And then if we go down, that's where, this is from just Wikipedia, by the way.
Right.
Then we can see the list of countries. So it comes down from the Arctic Ocean, goes through the Barents Sea, Norway. So that is the very, very northern, northeastern tip of Norway, where that's coming through. Then Russia, then Finland, where I have just been the last month. It was absolutely incredible.
That's the extreme north west portion of Russia that used to actually be part of Finland, actually. So, but it's now within the boundaries of the political boundaries of Russia, and then Finland.
Finland, then Russia again, because it's really right just on the border between Finland and Russia, and kind of sometimes goes that way and sometimes that way off the border. And as I said, I was just about 50 kilometers away from the Russian border in Finland. So probably exactly on this meridian. I
was just thinking that you were probably right on that. Isn't that?
I will research that. It would be amazing. It was certainly very magical. I don't know whether it's got anything to do with that, but could be. Then Russia again, so Belarus. So here we also see between Belarus and Russia, it's right the border where it goes right, left, and then Ukraine, interestingly.
Right.
Right through the Black Sea, through Turkey, Mediterranean Sea. Now we get to Africa, Egypt, obviously.
Hold on just a moment. So it turns out that, because I was interested in this, that where it goes through Turkey is actually not straight through Göbekli Tepe. That's a little bit to the east. However, others that have done the geographical geodetic mapping would say, well, actually the true center is north of Giza, but it's really close, but it's right along this line in Turkey. You know, so between Turkey and Egypt would be the actually the geodetic center of the landmass of America. So I think that does have to do a lot with so many other things in Turkey. You know, like I forgot to look and see whether Cappadocia is along that line. It may well be, you know, the underground cities that are in that area. Then it goes across the Mediterranean, and then it goes.
Then we come into Africa, Egypt, obviously, as we've mentioned, Sudan, South Sudan, Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo, Uganda, Tanzania. We can see that this certainly has been total conflict area for a very long time. Lake Albert, unfortunately, some of these, I've lived in Africa for a very long time. Some of these lakes are still carrying the names of British kings and queens. Then Uganda, Tanzania, so that is the very west of Tanzania. The eastern side is on the Indian Ocean. Lake Tanganyika, Zambia, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and finally.
One moment. Back to those lakes, okay? So it turns out those lakes are where Sir Richard Burton was back in the 1800s, was when he was seeking out where the source of the Nile was. That's where the source of the Nile was. Right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Sorry, I have a cat visiting on my table, so I hope he doesn't walk across the laptop. I'm trying to prevent that. I was a bit distracted right now. Yeah, no,
Right.
that is the source of the Nile, yes. And it is also said, if you will know that from the work of Linda Tucker and others, that there's actually an underground river that goes down the 31st meridian and then empties out into the that's the Pacific Ocean. Well, basically at the Horn of Africa then.
Indian Ocean.
Or Indian Ocean, yeah. Well, it's just there where it all converges as well in terms of oceans. So then, yeah, here we are in South Africa and yeah, Eswatini is South Africa. So those are Antarctica, obviously.
And
Those are those countries.
and that's really close to where Adam's calendar is. You know, the ancient.
Oh, in South Africa, you mean?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's a place still on my bucket list. Have you been there?
No, we did not
Mm.
go there on that trip, but we discussed it. And then back to the Southern Ocean, and then down to Antarctica. And so it's a very interesting coordinate, that 31st degree, Zep Tepi, right? So this is something to think about, speculate on, and in fact, as of the information that's coming out in this past year, the rift zone is there also, and there's all kinds of strange stuff happening there where it's like separating more. You know, there's like water.
I've been there and I've literally seen the evidence of
Mhm.
it. You know, I often am in a place that is on the shores of Lake Naivasha, and Lake Naivasha is periodically
Mhm.
getting more water out of nowhere or
Right.
less water into nowhere. It's a very strange appearance, actually. Right now, it's has a very high lake level,
Yeah.
but it just fluctuates like that.
So that's the 31st meridian there, or in our revisioning of all of this, it's the 0 meridian, right?
The prime meridian,
Right.
as we are rethinking it. Mm.
And, and you know, if you think about that, I mean, considering 2025 has Saturn and Neptune moving to 0 Aries, okay, and also the North Node right at the lunar standstill time. I think those are clues, and some of the clues representing or connecting to the decision to make this radical move in the school to use again this as the prime meridian,
Mm.
the actual world 0 Aries point, not Greenwich. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're going to look at something else here. Um, my own research came upon a book some years ago. This is it.
Atlantis. Oh, yes, Professor Aricio Santos, Atlantis, a lost continent finally found. So luckily, just if anyone is interested, I found a resource where one can download this book because it might not be easily available in book form, but it is available. So if anyone wants to put that into their search engine, you might want to find it.
And unfortunately, Professor Santos is no longer with us, but it's in that book that he suggests where the prime meridian was further back when the Sundaland area was the heartland of Atlantis. Okay. Now, see, during the Golden Age, if you happen to be Eurocentric or American centric, then during the glaciation, everything was under, large amounts of ice. However, around the equator, that wasn't the case. And so therefore there's a golden age Atlantean perfectly thriving maritime culture that was happening at that time period. And so you might want to show the map of the two maps of Sundaland. Sundaland is has been in the news recently because, and it's like all over the place now, they have now found human remains and ancient human remains off the coast of Java under the sea. You know, because actually the ocean there is only about 50 meters high. You know, so in other words, it's the area that had been above the water. So here is, I think this is the one, this shows it when it's joined, right? Yeah. So here is the ancient Sundaland area that shows how Java and Sumatra and Borneo and Malaysia, Singapore, they're all joined. Even a little tiny piece of the Philippines is connected. Actually, there's two of the areas of the Philippines that have a completely different geology than the rest of the Philippines, and two of the islands, Mindoro and Palawan. So they're connected also to the larger subcontinent, which would be called, it's called Sundaland. And so this is how it had been prior to the 400-meter rise in sea level. Now the other, put the other one up now, again.
So here we come to the more modern map of Sunderland, which is this one here, I suppose.
Yes, and so now the area that had been above water, and there you can see where Bali is, and you can see Java, you can see Sumatra, you can see the large island of Borneo, which over here they call Borneo. And then all this would have been connected. It's all part of the same landmass. And it turns out that just in the last few months, they've discovered ancient human remains and cities, not cities, who knows if they're cities, but like remains of humans from 100,000 years ago, just off the coast of Java, right there, which is now water. So it's just right off the coast of Java, under the 50 meters down in the in what is now water. Now you can see where Bali is over there, and there's an island to the right of Bali, which is called Lombok.
There, that one,
and
that tiny dot.
And to the right of Bali there, you're kind of to the right of where that dotted line is. And that is an area called the Lombok Straits. And those that are geologists know the importance of that, because that's it's called the Wallace Line, where the animal life, flora and fauna is totally different on one side of it compared to the other side of it. And so therefore that was the sailing route into the heartland of Atlantis, because the area there that you can see that's now ocean would have been above water. And that would have been where the agriculture was, where the cities are. In fact, if you can look on LiDAR and radar and so on, you can actually see the ancient, four rivers that riverbeds that are under the water now. And they were actually researching one of the riverbeds under the water, which is where they found the remains.
They were pretty clearly visible on that previous map as well. You could see those huge river systems, the land of the four rivers.
We could go back to that for a moment, actually, because that's a really good thing to have noticed.
Yeah, you can see there
Right.
is one here that is a huge river system, one here, and another one here. So
Another,
those would be the four big river systems here.
and actually, Professor Santos went into that in some depth regarding the four major rivers that, of course, that Plato refers to as the four rivers that are associated with Atlantis. Um,
Mm.
so this is Atlantis, which some Native American groups in North America, they call Lemuria. But it's to see the thing about calling this area Atlantis is because of the misunderstanding about the renaming of the Atlantic Ocean. Because back when Plato had written his stuff, the Atlantic meant the world ocean. It didn't mean what we call the Atlantic Ocean. So if you happen to be in Europe, then of course they might refer to this in as Lemuria, but in North America, then it's the same thing. Lemuria and Atlantis are the same area. You know, at least the most
Oh,
recent.
you are just enlightening me here, Daniel, because I was wondering about this for a very long time, as you know, just energetically, I couldn't find the difference. So I was wondering.
Well, no, that's a larger discussion, and in fact, I want to suggest here that some years ago, and you can find this on the under the Founders Corner of our website, under the Founders Corner, is a whole series of videos called "The Further Adventures of Shamanic Astrology," and one of them is about Sundaland. So this
Mm.
it's just that that was years ago, and it didn't have this recent information about the actual discovery, you know, the physical, the actual, the archaeological discoveries of the remains of humans in that area. Uh,
Mm.
so,
Obviously, we want people to go to our website, absolutely. And the whole further adventures of shamanic astrology is also a playlist on YouTube, which has the whole series in it, so people can find it there as well.
living in Asia, that was another thing that sparked my interest in the Sundaland hypothesis regarding as one of the main areas of so-called Atlantis, because it was a world civilization at that point during the Golden Age. It just wasn't in Northern Europe or Northern America, you know. That's what
Mm.
by ice. Anyway, so what Professor Santos suggests and is that the previous prime meridian was in between Bali and the island of Lombok, the sailing
Mm.
route into the heartland of Atlantis. And the reason for that, other than the practical reason for it, is that, and you can put up the, I'll say more about this if you put up the Lombok Straits
Mm.
slide. Okay, so here we have Bali, and then there's an island that you can actually see from the tip of the left tip of Bali there. And incidentally, if you can see on that far north east portion of Bali, the little tip that comes out there, that's actually where we're going to be having a course in November. That's the site of where we're going to be having an in-person course that I'll be there for. But from that point, that is right at the foot of the dominant physical feature of Bali, which is Mount Agung, which is a really dominant active volcano. And directly across the strait on that little tip of Lombok is an equally impressive active volcano, which is called Mount Ranjani. And so what this represented was the original twin pillars. You know, so the whole thing was transported to the Straits of Gibraltar, you know, and that became a twin, you know, the twin pillars of which was okay, and the story gets transported to different areas. But the original twin pillars are those two volcanoes, and you can see them. And when they're going off, you know, basically one island sees the volcano going off on the other island. And so so this would be, according to Professor Santos, the pre-Younger Dryas prime meridian. And there are very good reasons for that. Now where that prime meridian is in between, according to the way that's calculated from Greenwich, between 115 and 116 longitude, east longitude. And what we provided here, and you could do either 115 or 116. Wikipedia doesn't provide a 115 and a half. So we have the 115, and you can see now in our final slide here that we're going to show you is the portions of the Earth that would be along the 115.
And I'm just trying to find out, that's the other one. Okay, just a sec, it has disappeared. Here we go, 115. Yeah, maybe there is a 116 as well, but
There is, but I put the 115 in, and then that it would be somewhere between 115 and 116, which would be the 0 Aries point.
So this would again be the map now of where this particular longitudinal line goes. So, and then if we go down to the list of countries, we have from pole to pole, the Arctic Ocean, Laptev Sea, which I have never heard of before, but then obviously large, the landmass of Russia really crossed by that, then Mongolia, China, South China Sea, which we have heard about in the news recently.
Just to the left of the Philippines.
Yeah, then Brunei, Malaysia. So Brunei is on that island that you just mentioned as Borneo. That's a country of Brunei. Then Malaysia and Indonesia, Java Sea, Bali. So that's exactly where the point is.
And so that Java Sea and Bali Sea are the places that would have been above the ocean, above water during that time.
And then, you know, further parts of Indonesia, the Indian Ocean, Australia. It's just the furthest western tip of Australia, as far as I have seen that there on the map. Then again, Indian Ocean, Australia, Indian Ocean, Australia, Indian Ocean, Southern Ocean, Antarctica.
So this is, we put this out here to be part of the larger story about why we're now using Giza. I have not, other than the work of Santos in this very valuable book, I've not seen other references to the pre-Younger Dryas prime meridian, but having spent time in Bali, there's certain very intriguing things there, because the thing a lot of people don't know about Bali, it was around the 5th or 6th century that they created a religion. And so it's a completely, the different priests of the different traditions got together and created a hybrid religion, which was taking the best feature they found of Confucianism or China, and had to do with ancestors, you know, honoring the ancestors, that part. They took the peaceful and meditational traditions of Buddhism, and they incorporated the gods and goddesses of Hinduism. And you can actually see this on the temples that are the earliest temples in Bali, where they have this rendition of 2 dragons coming down and meeting in Bali. And it's the shape really of the star pattern of Draco the dragon, which was a constellation that was most essential to the cosmology of the ancient Chinese, okay? And so it's as if you have the patterning of the dragon coming down from China and then from India and meeting there. And to me, that's another clue that at that point they were remembering the ancient significance of that particular area of the Earth. So whether we will go back to using that one or not, no. But anyway, we're definitely, I think it's good enough to work with Giza, which is the post-Younger Dryas, which is the epoch that we're in now. And Lynn reminded me to mention here that if you bring in the Steiner material and look at the secret society mystery school renditions of the epochs of human history, we are in the post-Atlantean epoch, okay? However, right now, we're in the one that is the recapitulation of the Egyptian time. The whole thing is a recapitulation of Atlantis, but then there's different portions of the post-Atlantean epoch that are connecting back to Persia or different other portions of the development of the current culture. And so the current time period is a recapitulation of the Egyptian time, right? So you think about that from the perspective of Zep Tepi, but also think of it from the perspective of these controversial finds now that have happened under the pyramids.
And also just simply by how many people really feel this very, very strong connection to Egypt, the Egyptian culture. They want to find out more about that. And, you know, as far as I understand, just maybe to clarify that this is built on the Steinerian model of biographical counseling, which can be applied to world events as well, where you have a center point, which here would be the Atlantean time. And then when it comes out of that in that post time, then it mirrors the times that have been before that.
And last but not least is that we are hopeful of putting together an event, and my goodness, there's going to be so much attention placed on this. A nearly 7-minute long solar eclipse in August of 2027 crosses Egypt and right smack over, I mean, directly over Karnak, but also over Amarna, which was the place of Akhenaten. And I just came upon something recently, Naraya, that Queen Scotia, who actually is the mythic progenitor of Ireland, and then ended up becoming the source of the name Scotland, right? Queen Scotia, who is apparently one of the daughters of Akhenaten.
There we go.
So
we are all distant relatives.
a lot of wild stuff there. So anyway, I think that we've taken this as far as we need to take it, and hopefully this will be a bit interesting or mind-bending even for those who are listening. And now you will know the rest of the story about why we are doing the world charts out of Giza and no longer recognizing the political instrument of the Anglo-American Empire. So there you have it.
I just want to have a final pointer also towards the many in-person events that we have coming up and that are so important to us. And at the heart of our school, we do not want to be an entirely online school. We do stress on the heart-to-heart, soul-to-soul connections that we can only create when we really come together in person. So we have, as we've already mentioned, we have the Feywood event coming up, and then there are also various smaller events that Daniel is creating that are part of his apprenticeship program, but they can also, if someone is really strongly interested in that, be available to members of the public. And then we have in October, we have our so-called all-school gathering coming up in Oracle, Arizona, with many presentations where we also come together in person, many night sky explorations under very wonderfully dark skies. And then in November is a whole entire course one, which is the archetypes. We call it the Archetypes and Scripts course, understanding a birth chart at this wonderful place in Bali with the view to the Mount Agung.
Yep, right underneath it. I mean, it's just right there in the background. You can't avoid it. They're right there. This is great. I'm really happy to have had a chance to share this material with you. It's an exciting area of speculation, research, and interest for me, and I hope it is for the rest of you listening. So until next time.
Thank you so much, Daniel, sharing all your wisdom, all your research that is never ending with all of us and for everyone else. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, having also an interest in this topic. All the information we've mentioned can be found on our website, on our YouTube channel. You can sign up for free to our bi-monthly newsletter, which always gives updates on events and also has articles, wonderful things. With that, thank you all so much. And have a blessed time
Here at the Neptune still point. Okay, see ya. All right.